Authentication 101. Authentication is just another way of saying that your application is going to verify you and provide you a key which gives you access to specific pages in your application. The simple way to say it is implementing a login logout, right? The more technical way to say it is that you receive a key from your server, and that key gives you access to specific pages in your application. So you can make authentication or this key mandatory for one page or just a few pages or for all pages. It's completely optional. But you need that key to be able to access those pages. So that's a better way to imagine this, because you could say, make sure the user is authenticated to access this page or that page. You can say something like that to AI, and it will know how to like specifically give that instruction only to that page, right? So let's go right into the technical understanding of what exactly happens when you try to authenticate, right? Let me explain this flow chart. This is called as a sequence diagram. So it shows exactly how a communication between your computer and the server happens. We discussed what a server is in the last call. A server is just another computer, right? Server stores information, data, and it is responsible for routing. If you tell the server that I want like data for this specific thing, so the server will go fetch that data from the database, bring it back, and give it back to you. So all that data is not stored in your client or your app. All that data is usually stored in a database that the server has access to and will fetch it on demand. A client and a server architecture, we spoke about it last call. So if you need a revision, you can check out that video. But usually the communication between client and server is what creates this authentication, right? In your client, when you go to your login page, the usual trend is to create a login page at the /login domain, where you would see an email address and password field where you have to go fill that out. After you fill out your email and password, it sends a request. So this get means there are two types of requests. There's a get request and a post request. The difference between that is generally in terms of what kind of information is sent and the security policies behind it. Get request is generally less secure and post request is generally more secure. That's the only difference, but you can choose to do either of those ways. So if you're sending more sensitive information, pick post. If you send more like information that is okay if it's like public, you use get request. You're just visiting the /login page. So when you visit it, it returns a sign-in form. And when you get that form, you enter your email and password, and then it sends a post request, because post request is a little more secure. So it sends a post request to another endpoint. This endpoint is the endpoint that your application will have on your server with your username and password, right? So you send that username and password to your server, and your server will check in the database if this user exists. It compares your username and password and check if it exists. It will verify the password, and then it will create a key for you. JWT stands for JSON Web Token. You can just imagine it as a key. So your server will generate this key for you, and it will return the key to you to your computer, right? So when you get that key, you store that key in your local storage, which is your browser, and then redirect the user back to the dashboard. So you like once you logged in, you want to send the user to a different location. So this is basically how the high-level flow works. So you're talking to the server, sending all your information, getting a key, and sending the user to a location after they've signed in. This is a typical login flow, right? So far, is it clear for you all in terms of what's happening, how the communication between client and server is happening?
Yes, sir.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah, because like I'll show you a demo, then like you'll understand exactly what is happening. You'll exactly see it in action right now. We generated the key. The key is given to the user. The user stores the key in the local storage and then redirects the user to the dashboard. Now, when the key is incorrect, which means you give an incorrect password, the server will return an error. And then your client will say login failed, basically. This is as simple as that. So usually a login system is just a communication between client and server, And this is usually the sequence of things that happens. All of these happen would take maybe a couple of seconds. So that's why you see. So depending on, you can imagine how many types of errors could happen. Like, for example, one of these calls may fail. So if the server doesn't send this step 2, your page will not load. Or when you're sending step 3, this thing might fail. And then basically your server will not receive this thing at all. So depending on where the issue is, you will be able to debug. But often you don't have to go this deep into debugging. AI just does it for you, but it's just useful to know what's happening. Similarly, now you logged in once, and every single time you visit a page that requires authentication, so you need to send the token. So every time you visit a page that you specified requires this key, your browser gets the key from the local storage and makes the request with that key to the server, saying, look, I want to visit this page. Here's the key that I got. And then your server validates the key and says, okay, the key is valid, you can go to that page. And then your browser can go visit that page. Once you visit that page, and then if, let's say, your key is not valid, then it would give you an error, right? Why this is useful is like the key itself has a temporary lifetime. So your key could expire in, say, depending on what you set it up, it could expire in 3 days or 5 days or 10 days or whatever. And that's why in certain apps, when you log in and stay logged in, after a few days, it automatically logs out. You might experience this on Slack. You might experience this on like several apps where it like automatically logs out and asks you to log in again. And this is because this key that your server gave is not unlimited. There is a limited time limit to which that key is valid. So every time it validates this thing, it validates the key. One, does a key like that exist? Two, has that key expired? So it validates both of this, and then it grants access. So this is on a high level, like the basic communication between the client and the browser, right? This is just to give you an idea, but now we can jump directly into the demo of it, right? Here's an application. I'm opening it on Cursor, and I will run this application. So npm run dev. So you can see what the application is over here. So it's a simple food delivery platform, the grocery delivery. So you can add things to the cart, and then like it gives you a little notification on the bottom. And if you refresh it, like the data disappears because we are not connecting it to a backend or anything. But yeah, so you can add things, you can increase the quantity here, or you can delete it, right? So we have a simple app like this. But let's implement a login functionality here. The way to trigger this is so easy. All you need to do is know how are you going to implement this login functionality, which means what service you're going to use. So in this case, we are going to use Supabase. Supabase is the service provider for all our login and logout. We used Supabase in the previous database module as well. So it's just your backend. So your Supabase will give you all your backend. It will give you a database. It will give you authentication, all the backend stuff you need to do. This like a whole backend engineer, right? So all you need to know is that you need to use Supabase to implement authentication. So what you're going to do is in your cursor, I'm going to use Claude code. So I will open a new terminal, and then in this new terminal, I will just type Claude. So that is how you start Claude code. And once you start your Claude code, you just have to say implement login functionality with Supabase. So I will say email, password, login functionality, right? This is all it takes to tell AI to implement this for you. And the more important things to understand is what to do after this, because when you do that and then you try to log in, it will still not log in, because you need to understand what are the configurations that you need to have before this works, right? So let's give this some time. When it goes and implements this, it'll take a few minutes. Meanwhile, we can go into Supabase and let's create a new project. So you can go into Supabase, sign up, and once you're in Supabase, so I've created this organization, and within here, I can create a new project. I'm just going to call this project Grocery Delivery. and I'll just put another random password, and region you can select the closest to you, and basically just create a project. Okay, so when you've created it, there are two keys that you need to connect your app to the Supabase. So Supabase will handle all your login functionality, all the functionality for all this thing we spoke about. This all Supabase handles. So your server is basically Supabase. So your client is basically your app. So to get your server to talk to your client, we need a key. We need some identification from Supabase that we put in our app. So if you scroll down, once you create a project, you have to give it some time, and it's retrieving all the API keys below. When it creates, you'll have the whole key that you can simply use. Let's give it another time. Meanwhile, we'll go check out what's happened with Claude code. So we just say make all edits. There you go. So Supabase has given us a project URL and an API key. So these two keys are what you use to tell your app that you're talking to Supabase. This is almost done, and I'll show you what it does, right? It'll take maybe a minute or so. See, this whole idea of creating a to-do and making all of the steps and implementing each step one by one, this multi-step implementation is what Claude Code is really good at. It's better than all the other tools out there. It knows exactly how to break it down and go implement one by one, and it does its own ensuring that what it did is right. Okay, so in Claude Code, once you did that, it already gives you instructions on how to set it up, right? So it says implementation complete. Supabase configuration already set up. You don't need to do anything about the Supabase configuration. These are all like technical stuff. We don't need to go so deep into what is exactly happening. It says it created a login form. It created some authentication context, like super technical stuff. So these are the setup instructions that you need to do. To use authentication, create a Supabase project. We just did that. Copy env.example to .env. So if you see over here, it created this file .env.example. So if I open this file, you can see that it has two like links, like variables. So it says Veet Supabase URL and Veet Supabase ANON key, right? So it says you should just put your URL here. So this is where we connect our information from Supabase. So this will be our project URL. So we copy that project URL, go back here, and then just paste your project URL here. And we copy our ANON key. This is the ANON public key. So we just copy that and paste that key here. When you do this connection, then your app knows how to talk to your Supabase, basically. There is one more step. Let's go down to what Claude Code instructions, setup instructions Claude Code gave. It said, first copy .env example to env, right? So we got to rename this file and remove that .example. Why are we doing this, right? So .env stands for an environment file. So this is where you store your sensitive information like API keys. This API key is pretty sensitive. Like you cannot share this API key outside, right? So right now I'm using this video to record, so everything is public. When I publish it, this is all public. But then I will delete this key, because if I don't delete it, someone could use this key and get access to my database just by themselves, and they could leak all the information from my database and all of that stuff. So you avoid putting this key in your application. Instead, you put it in this .env file, and this .env file is not public. It will be only in your system. It won't even be accessible to Claude Code. It will be only in your file system, right? So that's why what Claude Code did was it created a file called .env.example. So it created an example file, and it gave us all of these things to fill. And it said, just rename it to .env so that it's accessible by your application. So the moment you just rename this, now these keys are available for your app. So now we finished the third step. We added our Supabase URL and ANON key, and we have configured authentication providers in Supabase if using OAuth. Don't have to worry about this. Email is by default configured, but that's actually all we need to do, right? So if you go into your app, you can see, let's refresh. Claude Code did everything. It created the sign-in button. And when you go into the sign in button, it also added a Google sign in here, but we will show how to do Google sign in, right? So I'm going to go and say, I'll put my email address and then just add a password. It sent an email for confirmation link. If I go to my email address, it will just send this confirm your sign up and say follow this link to confirm your user. When you click on this, you can see that it's logged in. So you can see the account logged in. So it's pretty straightforward. And why this whole thing we spoke about, right? So all of this happened in that one thing when we typed our email address and password. So you can actually see the key that it generated. So this key that it generated is actually in this application, and you can see it. If you open your inspect element, so you can just do right click and say inspect. You open this window, and within this, you can go into application. And within this application, if you click on local storage, you can see that there is an access token, a key that looks like this, right? So this is the key that your Supabase gave you. And this key will basically be used by your application in those pages that you define. So you can always say, for this page, I don't need authentication. Anyone can use it. And you can add another page to your app and say, for that page, always make sure this key is verified. So then that page will be restricted based on if your key exists or not. Yeah, so this is basically your high-level authentication for email address. Now, Google is a little tricky to do Google sign up. So I just logged out, and for me to go sign in again and say continue with Google, let me try to do it already. So now you can see that it gives an error. It says validation failed, unsupported provider is not enabled, which means you have to enable Google as a provider. So you can do that within Supabase. You can go into Supabase and then go into authentication over here. So just go to the side. You have all of this, the side nav bar. Please stop me if you have any questions. Yeah, I hope it's not too technical for you so far. On the left, you can see sign-in providers. And if you scroll down, you have a Google sign-in provider here. So there you go. So if you go to this, you have to enable it. And you need a client ID and client secret for you to connect your Google to Supabase. Because we connected Supabase, which is the server. So we connected, let me scroll back here and show you. We connected Supabase to client, to your app, but we still need to connect your Supabase to your Google account because your Google is helping you sign in with your account, right? So how do you do that? So you can, to get your client ID and client secret, you need to go to your Google console. So you can go to console.cloud.google.com. I put all the links in school. So if you go into Week-5, after this thing, I will put, this will be available for you. So I put like, where can you go for the Google console? Where can you have both the sequence diagrams and the presentation if you want to look up. So when you're in your Google console, you go here and then you create a new project and you say, okay, this project is grocery app, right? So you create this new project and then just give it some time for that project to complete. So it'll create this project and give you all the details for it. When you've created this project, you need to go into APIs and services. And then over here, you have to go to credentials because you're going to create this credentials to put into Supabase. So when you're in credentials, first it's giving you this error. It's asking you to configure this consent screen. This consent screen is basically the screen that comes after you say sign in, right? So let me show you. So basically in this application, if let me log out, and when I say sign up with Google, this screen that comes up, this is called as a consent screen. So you need to first configure this consent screen. So you go to configure, you say configure consent screen, and then just say get started, and just give a name of your app. So you would just say grocery app, basically, and just give any email of your thing. Just go next. Internal, external stands for, are you going to launch the app internally within your company, or like within where this email address is stored, or like to every user. So in this case, we want any user to be able to log in, right? And then we just give an email address. So I'm just gonna add my email, and then, oops, and then I just agree, and you just create this project. So this will take again a minute. And then when you've done it, you need to go into your sidebar, go into API and services again, then click on credentials, because you need to create a new credential. So when you're here, you can just say create new credential. I know if it's too confusing on all the options, you can go back in the video and follow the exact same steps one by one. You should be able to get it. You don't have to remember this, but that's why the whole point of this being on recorded. So you can go back and create this exact steps to do the same too, right? So you just say OAuth client ID, and then click on web application, because we are doing a web application. If you're doing a mobile app, you can do that same. And this web client one, you can just keep the same thing. It's just simply from where are you trying to log in. That's all. So where are you going to use this key? So I can also say cursor or like Claude code or something like that. So I'm going to use this key here. So now it asks for two information. It asks for redirect URI, and then it asks for JavaScript origin. I'll tell you what this is. For the redirect URI, you can already find it in the Supabase. So where it's asking you for client ID and client secret, below this there is a callback URL. So that's the same. It's redirect URI and callback URL. They're both the same. You just have to copy this, go put it here, and just add it here, right? And for JavaScript origin, it means from where are you trying to use this thing. So in this case, in our app, let me go back. I'm using it from localhost 8080. If I cannot zoom in, see, here's where you can see this. So this is the endpoint from where I'm trying to log in. So if you buy a new domain, you have to put your domain address there. So if you get like grocery.com, for example, you would have to put grocery.com into that origin. So here the origin is 8080. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go and paste it here. So just remove that last thing. So that's it. So when you create this, that's all you need to do for, okay, last step, just get this client ID. So now after you say create, it gave you this client ID. Copy this client ID, go back into your Supabase and paste it here, and then copy this client secret, go back to your Supabase, paste your client secret here, and save. That's it. This could be a little tricky at first because there's so many options that you're doing. But if you understand, okay, these are the same steps, and if you follow the same steps once or twice, it should not be that hard. So that's it. Now I can just refresh this and go to sign in with Google. And once you can see now all my email addresses are seen. So I can select one of my email address, and then it logs in without any issue. Yeah, that's how simple things are to like connect this. I know the prompt itself is simple, but all of this configuration, what is client ID, what is client secret, where do you put what, this is the more confusing part. But I hope if you like rewatch this video once or twice, you will understand why you're doing this. But the main key concept here is that we are using a client, which is your app. We are using a server, which is Supabase, and we are using a Google account for Supabase to depend on for the Google sign-in. So you need a key of your Supabase into your app, into your environment, and you need a key of your Google into your Supabase. That's the two steps that we are doing. We need to like bring those keys and put it there. And on a high level, the sequence of flows stays the same. So simple. Yeah, I think in terms of the prompt wise, we just said only one single prompt. We just said implement this functionality, and then it did the whole thing in one go. Yeah, pretty much how login works. It's actually quite easy. The task is simple. If you already have your apps, you can try and integrate Supabase auth in your project. Super simple. It takes, as you saw, 10 minutes. And you can also add Google login like quite easily. And if you document it, you'll understand. where things go wrong, and the next time you get better. Yeah. There are other options. You're not always restricted to Supabase. There's another option called Clerk. This is also another popular option in the market right now. It's called, the advantage of Clerk is it has a lot of advanced functionality. Certain types of user has access to certain types of pages. And then you have a super user who can manage roles of each user type. So you have all of these like advanced functionality embedded in Clerk, but you don't have that level of advanced functionality in Supabase. So that's when you would use Clerk. And yeah, Supabase is great if you want to use one place for both your database as well as your authentication. So last week we spoke about database, we still use Supabase. So Supabase is like one solution for all, but this is if you want like more complex, if you're building a much more complex app, Clerk might be your option. Yeah, I know I'm not exactly sure how technical you felt about this session. I think this is like the whole gist of implementing Auth. Any questions, anyone so far?
I think it was quite clear how to do it. If I follow the steps in the video, I don't think it'll be a problem. Yeah, I think I mentioned it on the chat already. I was just wondering if you want to just add like a password that you have to enter, would you follow like a similar thing, or that would, I guess that would be even easier in the end?
Yeah, so if you're doing a password, do you expect to keep changing that password, or is it just one password all the time that you want to enter?
I think just one password all the time. Yeah.
Just one password, right? So then you can just store your password in your environment variable, and then you can you don't even need a server. You don't even need Supabase for something like this. You can just say, I have stored my environment variable password over here in this thing, and always let me actually show you. So I would go to my thing and I will just say access password or something. So access password. So usually it asks you to enter this wheat in the beginning. So just add this and then wheat access password, and then you can just say your password, right? Just your password. So in this case, your password is the password that you're making it allow. And you would go to your AI and say, make sure when I log in, when I access page X, whichever page, ask for a password. I have the password stored in this one, right? Just put this thing inside my environment variable, inside my environment file, or inside my .env file. Yeah, this is all you have to say. You have to say that always refer to this password and authenticate me based on this password, and I've stored it inside this file. And it will create this password for you. And when you type this password, it will like log in for you. It should be quite simple. You don't need Supabase at all for this.
Okay, thanks. That sounds easy enough to try.
Yeah, it's quite easy. So this is for your portfolio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
For your case studies, when people access your case study, you want to put it behind the password.
Well, I'm not sure if I want to do that, but well, there might be some more sensitive data that I do want to have behind a password. So not like everything, but in case. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good idea to put it inside this env file and just put the password. So if you were to change the password, you just have to change it in the env file, and then it automatically changes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Hannah.
I'm still thinking about using Cloud AI. So is it really like Lovable, or do I need to use it in the framework of Cursor?
Claude code exists in something called as a terminal. Do you know your terminal in your Mac application? I will show you. So in your app, in your system, in your computer, you can go access, if you do command space or option space, you get something like this. And then you can type terminal. So it's just an application, right? So we always need to access it from the terminal. So that's different from Cursor. Within Cursor, you can create a new terminal window as well. So terminal is just accessible from everywhere. So you can access it from just your system, or from within Cursor, or within VS Code. It doesn't matter. All these code editing tools will have a terminal for you. So this is where you have to use it. It's not integrated into Cursor like that. Does it make sense in terms of what terminal is?
I'm just a little bit confused where to start with vibe coding. So if I should do it in Lovable or not, but I run out of credits, and I think Cursor is like super complicated and I need more knowledge in coding.
Okay. What are you trying to build? Are you trying to build like a simple prototype, or are you trying to build a full application with like login, backend, and all of that? A full product?
Yeah, actually a full product. Yeah.
Okay. So if you're using a full product, then Lovable might not be the best option for you. You might want to try Claude Code, because Lovable is very prototyping focused. The moment you start like adding a lot more functionality, things can break. It may use a lot more tokens, and it might be a little difficult for you to figure things out as you make a bigger application. Claude Code is easier. It's just initial technical understanding of what a terminal is, how to run an application, how to put your command inside Claude Code and see the change in your application. This is the initial technical part you need to figure out. But once you figure that out, it will be a breeze for you to add any amount of complexity. So that initial learning curve exists with Claude Code, but in a long term, you'll be thankful, like it has saved you a lot of time.
Okay, so I can also connect a GitHub and Supabase.
Everything from within Claude Code. Yeah, you can do some pretty advanced stuff with Claude Code, but that might get a little too complex for you. Like it can automatically go talk to Supabase, it can automatically go talk to GitHub and all of that stuff. But yeah, it might, see all those advantages you get from using Claude Code, which you probably won't get with your Lovable, because Lovable doesn't have what they call MCPs, which gives you all of these advanced functionality.
Okay. And can I also connect client management system then afterwards?
Client management system?
Yeah, or the user data, or if I want to send out emails later on.
So you need a different service for that. You need to know which service to integrate, right? So we use Supabase for backend for authentication. For sending emails, there are other services. One service is called Mailgun. So you can just go to Claude Code and say, I want to do this emailing service. Use Mailgun, and Claude Code will set it up with Mailgun. And you can ask Claude Code, help me how to set it up inside the Mailgun's thing, so I can achieve this, and it will give you instructions step by step. So yeah, I would use, for this specific use case, I would use Mailgun.
Perfect, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, Karan.
I was just wondering, because I'm using now Cursor to do my portfolio website, and if I want to change it over to Claude, should I just try to rather start from scratch and say, okay, I want to do this? Or should I like somehow copy that, what I've done in Cursor, and put it in Claude?
No, migration is so easy. You don't have to do any of that. You just stop paying for Cursor, and then, so I will show you, right? So continue to use Cursor. Cursor tool this whole tool is free. They charge you when you start using their AI features, right? So when you start like typing something, so here I'm gonna say add login functionality, right? It won't let me do that because I'm not paying. So it says Anthropic's models are not only available for paid users, right? So basically, just don't use this sidebar and use the terminal. And just use Claude inside the terminal. That's all. So when you say terminal and new terminal, it creates a new terminal like this. And over here, you just have to type Claude, and Claude Code is ready. So instead of typing on the sidebar, you type here. That's all the difference. So you don't have to change anything. No, don't start over again. Just continue using this instead of this, and continue using Cursor as well as a tool. Just not their chat, you're using Claude Code chat.
Okay, I see. But the stuff that I've already done with Cursor, do you think it would, if I used Claude Code from the beginning, would it like set it up differently or like better?
It would understand how your current application is set up, and it will follow the same thing. You don't have to make it redo anything. It just gets it. It just gets how your thing is, and it will continue to do it in the same style.
And another question, because from the paid version of Cursor using the AI, like it did quite a lot of explanations, like why it's doing stuff, which to me was quite helpful as someone who's not really a coder. Does Claude have that similar thing, or does it do more automatically things?
Yeah, you can do that here as well. So you can just say, ask questions in the same chat. So what's happening? Why is Google login not working, for example? So
Okay.
you don't have that ask versus agent toggle. It will do in its own, and it will answer your question here on its own. So if you want to stop it at any point, you can just press escape, and then it will stop its operations. If you press shift tab, it has these couple of modes. So this mode is like to automatically edit your code, which is same as your agent mode, agent thing on your thing. So let's say you have this agent thing, right? So you have agent and ask. So your agent mode is the same as auto accept edits on, and your ask mode over here is the same as plan mode on. So basically, if you can keep switching it between these modes using shift plus tab and make sure plan mode on is here, then it won't make changes to your code. You can ask any question. Help me understand why XYZ is happening. And yeah, you just use it like a normal AI chat.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the power of this is crazy because I don't know, maybe for this session it might be a little too complex because Claude has something called as a sub-agent, which means there are specific AI agents that you can have within Claude Code that specializes in one purpose. So you can have an AI agent that specializes in building Figma plugins. You can have one AI agent that specializes in doing automations. So within Claude Code, you can say, if you say I want to build an automation, it will go talk to that AI agent that specializes in building automations and build that automation for you. So it's so crazy that you can assign like teams, you can create teams within Claude Code which specialize in individual operations. This is how people are building these one-person $1 million companies. Yeah. Someone else had a question? Siddhant.
Yeah. So thank you for the session. It was very in detail. But my question was like, okay, Supabase is a SQL database, I believe. But then what if I want to connect my application with MongoDB or maybe Firebase? Because Firebase, they have their inbuilt authentication and stuff. So is it the same process which we did for?
Absolutely same. Just same exact process. You will be asked to create similar keys and put it same inside your .env file, same rename your .env file, exactly the same process. You're just using a different service. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
if let's say you're using Clerk for authentication of Supabase, right? And I think I have used Clerk before, and I can't remember going into Google like console and then setting up all the APIs like the way that you showed today. So have you compared setting up auth using both Clerk versus the other one, and is it still the same?
The technical implementation wise, Clerk is slightly different because Clerk gives you a lot out of the box. So the login window that you see, if you use other services, you create your own login window and then you talk to Supabase. In Clerk provides its own login window. That's all the differences, but it's all in the technical details. With all the other things, it's all the same. I would still go to the terminal in Claude Code and say, I want to use Clerk, and do the same thing as we did for Supabase, and it will execute it for you. And within Clerk, you get an API key and then put it inside your environment variable. Same process. Did you see a different process here, or?
No, I'm pretty sure I did Clerk back in like March or May or April, maybe. So maybe things have changed, but I don't remember going to Google console and then all that stuff. I'm sure it still works the same underneath, but I don't think Clerk is that. It requires that much setup. Again, I could be wrong about this. So that's why
I need to check, but sometimes they have an integration with Google. So if you log in through your Google account into Clerk, sometimes they manage that integration by themselves. I know what you mean. Or what they do is sometimes the Google authentication is not done with your Google account. Their Google account, they authenticate for you and they do the redirection. So they may make things simpler for you by doing these steps. You could be like, that could be very well be true. But yeah, there's something I need to check if this is still needed or not needed. But yeah, you could be right. But for most other services, I know you need to do the Google sign. But if you use, for example, Firebase, you don't need this Google thing because they're all in the Google suite of products. So you probably don't need to create this API key because they do this API key integration internally. Yeah. So yeah, you could be right. I haven't created something with Clerk yet with Google, but if it doesn't require and if it just logs in, sure, then it just works. But I use Supabase because I don't have to pay for two services. Like it's one service for everything, one service for authentication, database, everything. So I would put all in one place to make things simpler than having login in Clerk, backend in Supabase, and then something else elsewhere, MongoDB or something.
Yeah. And let's say you have multiple services which you use. Right? Let's pretend that I have Supabase for my backend database and some other service for something else. Are we still storing the API keys in one single .env file, or do we need multiple files for all the different services that we use?
One .env file. That's it. You
Okay.
just put it all in one .env file, and that contains all the keys for all your projects, all your services. Yeah. And what you would do is when you deploy, which we will see next week, you will just upload that .env file into whichever service you use to deploy. In our case, we will use Vercel. So you just upload that .env file there, and then that remains hidden from people who are visiting your app, but it remains visible to your app, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So the .env file is basically one file for everything.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. The thing is, one thing to remember is like .env file is so protected that even Claude does not have access to it. So even if you ask Claude what is inside my .env file, it cannot fetch it. It's prohibited because that is a secret file. That file is only accessible to you. Yeah. That was mainly today's session. It was a short one, and maybe in the next week we can talk about how to just get your apps live. So I think by now you have all the information you need to create a full application. Now it's just about putting it online. So yeah, if you want to take this week or spend some time going back to those videos and just start building your own thing, you could build something tangible in 2-3 days. It's not so difficult. Yeah. And if you have any questions, as usual, just ask me, put it on the school group, and I'm happy to answer. All right, then enjoy your Friday. Thanks for joining me here, and I'll see you next week.